Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to yet another edition of the Film Geeks podcast. And joined with me, as always, are Anandam and Anirban. And yes, the day which at least I didn't personally think would would be ever here is here. We just watched Zack Snyder's Justice League and the famed and fabled and almost mythical proportions of the Snyder Cut, which has been doing the round since 2017. A film which I think all of us across the board didn't think existed, did exist. And it was, I think we did a podcast covering the news when the news of when the Snyder Cut, the news that it was going to be released in 2021. We covered the podcast, then we will link that in the description below. You guys can go ahead and check what we thought about that news. But yes, here we are, and joining me as always, of course, like I said, Anirban and Arindam. How are you guys doing?
All good. This has been a good week for fans of both DC and Marvel, and especially DC. It has been a long time coming. I was amongst those who did not believe that the cut existed, and I'm kind of proven wrong. But also, yeah, it did not exist in real life. Like there were reshoots done. I think when we get into discussing the movie, we'll talk about those parts. Also, but yes, that rough idea of what we've heard from many people across the message boards, and also what Kevin Smith, surprisingly, he had described the sequences with Darkseid, etc. All of that did exist. And I got one part right, was that I think we had discussed in the podcast that if they would ever release it, it would be on HBO Max, because that would be like the perfect place to launch something like this. And I hope that in the future, this is, Warner Brothers tweeted that the bell has been rung. And this is something that I think they should capitalize on. I don't think even Friends got that much amount of subscribers in that the Snyder Cut did. And all across the world, this was unanimous. Like everyone were demanding Snyder Cut to be, released in some way or the other. Luckily, in India, we had multiple platforms, but many places, even in Europe and many places in Asia, they did not get the same treatment. So I'm pretty sure that they've seen that there's a huge audience out there, and they'll be paying Snyder buckloads of money to get some of that, Justice League money in again.
I think that's right. That's right. I think some of that is fantastically put. I think I was one of those naysayers who, that WB would shy away from releasing the cut because it just made sense business wise to just release anything that was out there because people were clamoring for it for years. I just think maybe the economics of the thing worked out in the end, mostly with even Zack Snyder taking no money at all and a lot of the actors taking a pay cut. I think all of that maybe convinced and the huge clamoring of all the fans around the world. It just made this possible. I think it's a brilliant decision because I think it has sort of jack started something that might result in something greater over the next few years. That's yet to be seen. I mean, Warner Brothers is famously very, very weird when it comes to their business decisions. And I hope this is not something that will be repeated with this one or the franchisee. Right?
Yeah, but before we go on to where the Snyderverse might head into, or if there is actually going to be a Snyderverse, because Restored the Snyderverse, the hashtag campaign has just been gaining steam and has been trending for a week. I mean, that is almost 4 days even before the film released. And it's if you go to any of Warner Brother or AT&T or HBO socials, it's just Restore the Snyderverse. And someone who works very closely with the digital media and with public relations, etc. This is something which Warner Brothers, AT&T, HBO Max. These are companies which this amount of social media chatter is something which a company cannot afford to ignore. But before we go into what the future lies, let's talk about the present. And let's just talk about the plot. In case you haven't watched 2017's Justice League, which you dodged a bullet, but in case you haven't watched 2017's Justice League, the story beats are the same, but how you get from point A to point B is completely different. It will just boggle your mind as to how, in 2017, people thought that this would be a good product to release to the audience, and this was an embarrassing movie, the 2017 film that is. But just in case you haven't watched it, and in case you plan to watch the Justice League, the Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, the plot is it picks up right after the BVS ended, Dawn of Justice, the 2016 movie. Uh, that's where it's ended, and basically what happens is fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act. Bruce Wayne or Batman enlists the help of Wonder Woman, who was introduced in Batman vs Superman, and goes ahead and tries to enlist a force of superhumans or metahumans just to face an upcoming disaster or an apocalyptic threat. Forgive the pun. But yeah, so enemies are coming from far away, and Bruce Wayne needs Earth's mightiest defenders to come together to fight said threat. These were the basic brass tacks. This was also the plot of the 2017 movie, because parts of the script were massively changed, but the crux of the movie, the films remain the same. Before I tell you about what I think, let's get to Arindam. Arindam, what did you make of the movie?
I loved it. I am among the few people who actually enjoyed Joss Whedon's version of Justice League. So, after having watched this movie, I will have different thoughts. I haven't watched that movie since, because I thought that was an okay-ish movie. Like I liked it. I didn't hate it. But this one, it totally blew me away, because going into a 4-hour movie, I had my apprehensions. I thought that it would be an overkill of every Snyder mannerisms that we kind of loathe but kind of like also. Uh, I thought, a 2 hours movie, the rest of the 2 hours will just be slow motion. But actually, that wasn't the case. I thought it was quite measured, even though they had a shot of sesame seeds flying in the air in slow motion. But somehow, I didn't really mind all that happening, because it made sense with the character. It was Flash. The slow-mo makes sense with that character. With the other people also, I don't think there was a lot of excess that was there. For a movie, even the exposition I thought was very well done. Uh, I have read about complaints regarding the exposition, but for a 4-hour movie, people I think would get a little lost, because unlike Marvel movies, you do not have 20 movies to fall back on. This is just that movie in which also for the mainstream audience, I think BVS, the entire DCEU movies are kind of forgettable if you consider the mainstream audience, and that much of exposition is very much needed. So I thought that was very well done. The acting was superb. I think Ben Affleck proves once again why he was one of the best choices. I was one of the people who didn't really like that decision, but I was proven wrong in BVS itself. I think he was the best part of BVS, even though
Yeah, he was the
that
best
movie.
part of BBS.
So the action sequences were great. I really, really, really liked Ezra Miller and Ray Fisher. Both these characters did not gel well for me in the Justice League version that we saw back 2 to 3 years ago. But both these characters, they form the heart of the movie. Just their monologues work, the character stuff with their respective fathers work. Everything just seemed to go flawlessly. Some characters, I don't know, they didn't get that much of screen time, even though it was 4 hours. I think Lois Lane was one of them. I think someone who has such a primary role in the DCEU, in the DC universe, should have had a little more to do in that movie. But she just played a very pivotal part in that Superman returning sequence. I think a lot more could be done, but Batman was a revelation, especially in that scene. In YouTube, you'll have the scenes in which they compare side-by-side comparisons of what Batman does during that scene, and it's laughable. Like what Joss Whedon decided to do when Batman was throwing in one-liners about getting hurt, and over here he had that gauntlet in which he was facing Superman's full beams. Like that was super cool. That is how you pay tribute to a character of that stature. And I really enjoyed it. I thought this was Zack Snyder at his best. I don't think he has been this good in quite some time. I think he has always been that good, and we have his another movie coming on later this year, which I think will be even a bigger hit, considering how many people are just watching this Justice League for the first time, and not just the Snyder bots as we tend to call them. So I think it's a great time to be a fan of these franchises, and I'm hoping that there's more to see from Zack Snyder when it comes to DC characters.
What a time it is to be a Zack Snyder fan. That's obviously, I'll echo that sentiment, what Arindam said. For the longest time, I've always believed that Zack Snyder has been a lot of style, but not enough soul and heart in his movies. Uh, Going through a 4 hour movie, I think I've changed some of that. If there is one movie right now, superhero movie, that is all heart, that you can tell that the director has left all his soul out there, all whatever he felt out there on the screen. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League, and there's no doubt about it. From the starting scene, every character has been treated lovingly and beautifully, and you can tell what vision he had. And it's a surprise because, like Arindam, I did not hate Joss Whedon's version of Justice League. I wasn't a big fan, but I didn't hate it either. But watching Zack Snyder's version, I can definitely say that Joss Whedon wasn't the right choice to direct that movie. It was should always have been Zack Snyder, and for that reason, I think this is a monumentous occasion, not just for DC fans, but for fans of superhero movies. And truly speaking, I think even for people who just love cinema as a whole, because the way that some of the scenes have been set up, the cinematography, the color palette, it's just brilliant. I can't tell you how I'm very happy because if you look at Zack Snyder's previous movies, some of them are very oversaturated and some of them have this very different hue which makes them look very washed out. At the same time, Joss Whedon's version did not look like that, but it did look sort of like a Marvel movie. In the sense, it was very bright colors and all that. Now, some of that is very muted in this version, and I love it because I think that it feels grungy and edgy without being a Marvel copy, which I think was something that a lot of people always wanted from a DC franchisee. And I'm very happy that this is finally something that has happened. And for all of us, we can all purport to be Marvel fans, but I can tell you that we want DC to do well as badly as we would like to see Marvel do well. Because in an ideal world, I think both of those both of those franchises can coexist with all of us being happy. It's not a camp that camp that we see DC and Marvel fans. It just irritates the fuck out of me. And for some reason, this is something that has existed for some time. But now I can safely say that a lot of people probably will look at the benefits of just looking at superhero movies and seeing that camps don't make sense, and you can be part of both. You can be as much expectant. You can be happy about the whatever is releasing from the Marvel camp, and be super excited for the DC camp also. And I think what Zack Snyder has done is kick-started some of this, and I really hope that they can continue and Warner Brothers takes the right decision and maybe invests in the right way, and we can see more movies from this camp.
I have a long and contentious relationship with Zack Snyder. I mean, the first time I watched the Zack Snyder movie was way back when he released his first film, that was Dawn of the Dead, and I had like a local video store near college, and I went there and I said like, what is the latest and greatest of horror films that you have? And he said like, check this out, it's a remake of a Romero film. I was like, okay, fine. And it just blew me away because visually it was so different from anything that I had ever seen. And I immediately saw who the director was, and it's Zack Snyder. And I clearly remember the day I was out, and Arindam actually, when I came back home, Arindam actually said like, there is this movie coming out for 300, which actually looks like a comic book. I was like, what do you mean looks like a comic book? And he was like, it fucking plays out like a comic book. And I saw the trailer for 300 and it just blew me away. And at least my brother and I, we've been huge Snyder fans since the time we watched 300 way back in the day. And then, he made Sucker Punch, which for the life of me, I didn't understand, but I appreciated, I loved the visual style. And at that day and age, when we were just coming on to the superhero age that we find ourselves in currently, uh, someone making an original sci-fi fantasy film, that was to be commended. And it was visually spectacular. It still holds up. I just watched it recently. It still holds up. It's a fantastic visual treat. And then we watched Watchmen, for which I have mixed feelings, and then Man of Steel happened. And Man of Steel is a movie which is, in my opinion, one of the best superhero films you can watch. Yes, barring the last 10 minutes, but Man of Steel is fucking amazing. And then, you had the first time I think my faith in Zack Snyder wavered was after BVS. And I have been one of the biggest, I have taken the time out of my day to lampoon people who back BVS, and then the Justice League movie happened. And I was like, Arindam, I appreciated it for what it was. And for me, the biggest reason for that was it was not like BBS. It was not difficult to get into. It was not a slog. The story beats made a lot of sense in Justice League. In hindsight, it does not. But yeah, it was more coherent that way. And then, I started reading more about what happened to the Snyder Cut, or did it actually exist? And for the longest time, I felt betrayed that the superheroes I wanted to watch ever since I picked up a comic when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and that was Batman and Superman in a movie together. That movie I could not enjoy myself personally. I hated that movie when it first came out, and it's very entitled of me to say this, but yeah, I personally felt betrayed by that film, and I took it out. I lashed out on people who actually appreciated that movie, and it's not their fault for liking the movie. You can like whatever you want to like, but it was very entitled of me. And then when I watched when I kept reading about what happened with the Snyder Cut, I realized how wrong I was, and this was a coherent vision of the last living auteur whose work it can't be ignored. Zack Snyder is one director. Not even Scorsese, not even Coppola comes close, in the sense that his work, people will either like it or they will hate it. There is no middle ground. Even now, if you go and read the comments or check for reviews, it's either going to be overwhelming praise or it's going to be, it's Zack Snyder doing Zack Snyder things. No other director does that. And that has to be special, especially in this day and age, where people are, at least someone like me, who is genuinely very sick and tired of how superhero movies, especially Marvel movies, look and how they play out. I have been saying for at least 5 years, we go back and check the older podcasts as well, I am really sick of the way a Marvel movie plays out. They look like a TV movie. They look, they have the same story beats. Every character is interchangeable. You remove Ant-Man and you put him in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's the same character. All of them make smart quips. And what separated this movie was it looks so different than what a comic book movie is supposed to look like, or what we expect it to look like. And it doesn't give a fuck about your predetermined dispositions about how a comic book movie should be. This is the perfect representation of what separates. Okay, before I get into that, what separates a DC hero from a Marvel hero is DC heroes are born with these powers, with the exception of Batman, of course. They have at least the heroes that we see in the Justice League, in the cinematic universe. These are essentially gods who are struggling to live with humans. The major difference here is Marvel heroes are not the same. So why treat them like that? Why treat them on the same playing field? These are mythological heroes. They are almost mythological status at this point in time. And I'm so glad that Zack Snyder went the route that he did, because I don't think there has been a movie since I think the first Iron Man movie that has treated the people. I don't even think Iron Man did that, but that has treated the people, the commoners around in the movie with so much kindness and empathy. You will always find the heroes, like when Superman saves someone, or when Flash, especially Flash, when he saves people, he always makes it a point to go up and ask these people, "Are you doing all right? Are you okay? Is everything fine?" I mean, Wonder Woman has that wonderful scene, and when she's introduced, when she's going up and speaking to the child, when she says like, "I want to grow up like you," she was like, "You can be whatever you want to be." These are things which a superhero should do, not make smart quips. Who gives a shit? I mean, you're saving an alien planet. No one is in danger. But when when a fight is happening in a populated area, and you actually show Flash using his almost tapping into the Speed Force and removing all of the falling debris, that is something special, and that is something which I really wanted from a superhero movie, and I finally have it. It's a wonderful, it's almost a work of art. It is fantastic, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you keep your preconceived notions aside and please go ahead and watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's streaming on Book My Show and all of the other platforms that people start speaking about. So go ahead and watch it. And very quickly, let's get to a segment called The Good, the Bad, and the Ridiculous. And of course, we've spoken about the good all of this while. Let's get to the ridiculous segment first. Anirban, what according to you, you thought was the most ridiculous sequence in the movie?
Okay, I don't think anything was over the top or ridiculous for me. I mean, I I know there were some points that are probably a little crazy that I think you can. But apart from that, I don't think there was anything that struck out to me. One of the things that I felt was ridiculous, but in a really good way, was the flashpoint, almost flashpoint. There's no
The speed
closest that we
poster.
can get. Yeah,
The speed poster.
yeah, the speed poster is that's the closest that it was ridiculously good. I mean, everything aside, I really love that scene. So it's ridiculous, but not in a bad way. It's in a ridiculously good way.
What I found ridiculous was that suddenly I was transported in a world in which Arnold was Conan and I could hear the lamentations of the women because nobody really asked that what was best in life. Why were there so many lamentations when that came out? I mean, I like Junkie XL like anyone else, but this score was, I
Yeah.
did not dig this score at all. It
Uh,
felt
uh,
like a mishmash of 2 to 3 different movies because you had Hans Zimmer there when Superman comes, he has that piano. When the Justice League kicks in, there's that distorted theme suddenly running. I did not find that as well. If Tom Holkenberg, I don't know why he decided to change his name also here uh, and not call himself Junkie XL because that's what he was going by when he was credited alongside Hans Zimmer in the previous BVS, I think. So he could have reworked the entire thing, since you are being paid. Maybe it's a 4-hour movie and he did not get paid enough to do that much. So Wonder Woman already has a kick-ass theme. I don't know why you need that bit to be
She had that
introduced
theme.
again.
The Wonder Woman theme.
It's there, but exactly. So she has that theme. I don't know why you need to add that prelude to it. It sounded.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Can I? Yeah, it's not going to be a podcast without me and you disagreeing. So, I think the score was fucking perfect, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, there is one bit which I did not get, but I think this is something which he just wanted to put in. It's an 8-hour soundtrack. If you go to Spotify and check it out, I started work listening to the soundtrack, and I ended work listening to the same soundtrack, and that's when it ended. That's how I figured out that it's close to 7 to 8 hours long. That's the soundtrack. You are supposed to have leitmotifs of the characters, no matter who has composed them. I mean, in Superman Returns, you had the John Williams theme playing. Are you supposed to say like, supposed to associate? I mean, every time the Captain America came in, you had the Henry Jackson soundtrack play. That these are sounds which are associated with these characters. You will have flight every time, or you what are you going to do when you are not saving the world? Those beats are going to play whenever you see the DC version of Superman. You had the Beautiful Light play in the Wonder Woman soundtrack. These are sounds which are associated with these characters. You had the Batman theme play, which Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer composed. So I think the soundtrack was on point, and I'll tell you 2 reasons why. Put in any theme, including the John Williams theme, when Superman flies again. That just doesn't work without flight. That scene is just epic, and that flight, that theme works because of that, and that leads into in the soundtrack and in the movie. It leads into when Flash taps into that to the speed post, which is my ridiculous moment as well, because that is one of the greatest superhero moments of all time, in my opinion, which I've seen in the film.
Did you like the monologue though while he was running? The monologue felt a little cheesy, but whatever was happening was so mind blowing.
Yeah, because his father didn't give him a chance, right? Because his father was like, "You're not going to do anything in life, so why don't you just not in these many words, but he wanted to be a good son."
I'm
And
kind
he
of
was like,
sad
"If I
that he
die,
isn't returning for the Flash movie. Though.
yeah." But these things can change. I mean, I'm pretty sure Cyborg will be brought in. I did have a problem, and my second ridiculous moment is the fucking Nick Cave song
Yeah, exactly.
when Aquaman
Aquaman.
walks into the shore. I mean, I don't like that song any which way, and it was so on the nose that I didn't get it. I was like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
Actually, all
You
the
know, so
songs chosen didn't really vibe with the movie that they had. They had. That's what I meant. It's very disjointed. You watch clips, they'll sound fine, but in the flow, when they're flowing from one scene to the other, the score sounds. They sound like they're from 2 to 3 different movies, and they
I
just
I
mishmash
I,
together.
I disagree about the score, but I agree about the song selection. If that makes sense. I don't really agree with the songs that were selected, perhaps because I don't really listen to this kind of music. But I thought the songs that was there in the Flash scene, where he actually rescues Iris, that song was
Yeah,
fine
that
because
works.
that's a song which I really like. Uh, the song to the side, that's one of the. And the last bit, which I thought was ridiculous, and it was ridiculously weird to see those singing Icelandic women, because as soon that's like really the first 5 minutes of the movie, and as soon as I started singing, I was like, is this going to suck? Is this movie that kind of movie where it's going to be weird and I don't know what the fuck is going to happen? And I was proven wrong because that's where it ends, you know. And I thought these two sequences were kind of ridiculous. And should we touch upon Martian Manhunt, or do you want to go and talk about the CGI? Because I think you have a lot of thoughts about the CGI as well.
The CGI, it's a little weird because I don't really mind. I know, especially during the battle sequences, I thought that fight with the Amazons was just amazing. The fight choreography, I think, takes much of that bad CGI away because the rendering isn't the greatest. It's exactly the same problem that Endgame also had during the Plains of Africa fight. Like you knew that this was just bad CGI. Over here, I made comparisons to Linkin Park's In the End. It's exactly that. You can see the shadows. It just feels weird. You know that it's not real. Uh, but the fight sequence was so well done. I mean, especially with Darkseid. I thought, I said that Darkseid will hardly be in this movie for 5 minutes. And I said, yeah, these 5 minutes will just be him sitting in a throne and that's it. But they had that entire fight sequence with him, and there was a Green Lantern, and there were gods, and Ares of all people dug an axe into it. Like, how cool can it get? Also, Steppenwolf, like, they made him such a. I hated that character in the original Justice League movie. It was just like a one-off Altu villain that they have in on these movies. But over here, they somehow, I don't know how, they didn't change much except for the character design. When the stills were released and also the poster, I thought that entire suit looked bad. The spiky things, I called a pincushion and everything. But in motion, it looked really good. And that is something, and even the weird changes that they made to his face, it actually helped build some empathy for the character.
And
They
also his
gave him,
character motivations. His
yeah,
character
exactly.
motivations are completely different.
So with Desad, you felt for him when he said that you owe 50,000 more worlds. So that was also ridiculous bit. But you felt for the guy. Bichara, like, what else can he do? Like, the only world that he was defeated, Darkseid was defeated in. He was actually on his way in conquering that world. So that, you felt bad for the chap. And I thought that was really well done, in which they literally brought that character around. And everybody hated it. And I didn't really mind the character design in the original movie, but seeing this in motion, this is like a this is a huge improvement.
It just goes to show, like, what the fuck were one of those thinking? Like, why did you really release this abomination on the big screens? It just made no sense. And the biggest reason for that is cutting out the proverbial heart of the movie, that is Cyborg. Cyborg's arc was so well done, and for me, uh, he is one of the best characters of the movie and one of the best superhero arcs that you'll see in a very long time. And I kind of detest this ridiculous notion that you need to have 10 movies to have like a Justice League movie. Please remember that 10 years ago, this entire concept did not exist. We were used to having 5 or 6 different characters introduced in a movie, and that movie went on.
We have
We
Mystery
had
Men,
Lord of the Rings.
one of the greatest
Huh?
Justice League movies of all time.
I'm sorry.
Mystery Men. We
Yeah,
had
Mystery
Mystery
Man.
Man, one of the greatest Justice League movies of all
Yeah,
time.
but no, I'm serious. I mean, where do you? This is why do you want these movies to be like Marvel movies? That's the reason why Marvel movies exist, to be like Marvel movies. These movies can stand the way that they are, and these characters don't need like to have like 5, 6 different movies to establish their their motivations, etc. Look at the way they treated Flash, they treated Cyborg, they treated Superman, and even Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, these great pantheon of characters, and they treated them with so much. And this is coming from a guy who went on a famously on a rant on this very podcast saying like Zack Snyder doesn't get these stories. And here I am after 4 years saying like no one else could have done justice to these characters, excuse the pun, apart from Zack Snyder. And I really want to see, and I really wish and hope that the Snyderverse is restored. Anirban, what are your thoughts on the matter?
Uh, no, you're right. There's a lot of characters that motivations are very clear now. I mean, he does have 4 hours to set up this thing. I mean, if you look at what Joss Whedon did, he fit a lot of things in 2 hours and did none of them justice. Now that we look them in retrospect, in hindsight, obviously everything is 2020. But if you look at what Zack Snyder has done and you look at that, you can immediately tell that that movie was just too fully crammed with too many concepts, too many things that just did not make sense. So you had to chop off a lot of things, and you actually ended up cutting up, chopping off a lot of the good parts. I mean, I can understand why you have the studios back asking you to make cuts, to make it into a 2 hour movie. But this is not a 2 hour movie. This is a 4 hour epic. That's the right way to put it. It's a 4 hour epic. So I don't agree with you when you talk about all the characters having been as good, or their character arcs being as good. Like for example, I really didn't like Aquaman's portrayal. I mean, there's not much backstory. There's a little bit of Vulko. Obviously, was supposed to be Vulko's first outing on the screen, but ended up being his second. In again in hindsight, in hindsight. But at the same time, because we have already seen the original movie, we already have a lot of those context. So it could have maybe changed a little bit of that. He feels too cocky, but at the same time, the only scene where you feel like he makes a lot of impact, where he's saving, or where he first meets the rest of the uh, members of the Justice League in the Dark Caverns of the Cave. But apart from that, there's one thing that I really, really dislike, and I don't know if you guys were equally impacted by it, but the aspect ratio is just ridiculous. I don't understand this choice. I don't understand why it has to be in this ridiculous.
Okay, so did
But
you have the same opinion about First Cow?
First Cow is something that I was not watching on a big screen. When I say big screen, I was not watching on a
No, so
TV.
even this for you, you were not watching on a big screen. So
I
if you can,
was, when I say
if
big
you can
screen, I
allow,
was
no,
watching on a
if you
TV.
can allow Kelly Reichardt to make a movie in 4:3, why not Zack Snyder?
Because when I go to watch First Cow, I'm not there for the cinematography. If I'm going there for the cool CG, then maybe I would have complained about this. But a lot of things become vastly cinematically better when it comes to it. Now, I'm not ever
You know, I
going to.
think I think this is a purely business sense because when COVID etc. opens up, there's no way in hell HBO Warner Brothers does not put this on an IMAX screen, and
Which is,
this is
Yeah,
formatted for an
which
IMAX.
is
Yeah,
fair,
IMAX.
but why not have a. I mean, most of the audience that is going to end up consuming this, I mean, the amount of sales that it must have done, even in India where piracy is actually rampant. I think it has done quite a good, decent amount of business. So it does make sense to have sort of a cut which would have catered to that audience also. And it's not a big deal. I'm watching it on my TV. I mean, I do want some of that. Like, it did bother me that it's a different way to look at it. Obviously, some people are not bothered by it. For me, I was really bothered by it. And I think they
I
could have done
personally felt
better.
very immersed. It was a very immersive experience to me because
But where did you watch it?
uh, I watched
You
it on my
what?
TV. Where else would I watch?
I mean, there
For
are
me,
I
I,
mean,
I
yeah,
didn't really mind. Like I was on my
I didn't
TV
mind
too,
it
and
because it's the way he wanted it to be is he was future proofing it for release so that they didn't want the execs to fuck with it at all. It is in this format. I am not going to give you the leeway to reduce the screen because I mean if you watched the DVD release of Brad Bird's Mission Impossible, it suffers. Okay, he makes it widescreen and it actually suffers. And he did not because he recorded it. And I read this in an interview with Zack Snyder where he says like he fell in love with this aspect ratio when he started using IMAX after listening to Christopher Nolan and watching Christopher Nolan make Dunkirk, I think, or was it Interstellar? Either of these two films.
But even if you look at just Christopher Nolan
So,
and
and
the
he
way he
says,
operates, right? He switches from one aspect ratio to the other. Here it's
Yeah,
constant one bombardment of 4:3.
yeah, exactly. Because these are two different schools of filmmaking. If you see Nolan has very quick cuts. Most of his cuts don't exist. Most of his shots are not more than 10 seconds long. And Zack Snyder is, you know, he focuses on that. He has that widescreen thing going on. When even that is a signature shot. He focuses on one object moving through time and space as as everything else is slowed down. So you cannot have multiple cuts in that, and that is the biggest reason why he wants it to be in this aspect ratio. I'm not trying to defend, whether I'm not trying to say that your opinion is wrong because you're completely entitled to it. But there is a very valid reason why it was the way it was. I mean, it didn't bother me, but why I brought up the
While you're right about that, all I'm saying is that it is made for the big screen, but I'm not watching it on the big screen. At least not for the near foreseeable future, right?
It is not made for the big screen because he did not want it to be released on the big screen. That is the point. It was not even going to be released
When you
till
talk
last year.
about big screen, you're talking about the IMAX experience, right? It is shot for the IMAX experience. When you're talking about future
I think
proofing, that's what you're talking about.
there's also I think aesthetic needs to play a part because this we didn't get that part, but HBO Max starts off with this is exactly how Snyder intends it to be viewed as, and that includes the aspect ratio, and also we are getting Justice's Grey, which is black and white and 4:3. So I know all the scenes won't make sense, especially the darker CGI parts, but the one with the trailer they focused on, I think that was a very wise decision because it did not have much CGI and it had some terrific lighting going on. So there's a reason why Mad Max Fury Road, the Chrome edition, looks good is because the entire movie takes place in bright sunlight. So if you desaturated it, it looks fine. There's just that nighttime scene, and that looks like noirish.
There's too much detail, is what you're saying, right? There's too much detail in this one scene for it to just be relegated to a black and white scene. Actually, one thing that I hate about that scene, I love that scene as a whole. That whole scene. One thing that I really hated about that was the way that Flash runs. Ezra Miller, he runs like I don't know, he has a funny run. And I think when it comes to a lot of representation, I think a lot of people have done it quite better. I mean, if you just look at even the TV versions of Flash, I think the CW, in the CW verse, the multiverse, I think they do that speed run pretty well. I think the trail and everything. I think the way that Ezra Miller runs, it just doesn't line up.
Too flashy.
It doesn't feel too flashy. Actually, it doesn't feel flashy.
I really like. I have got used to it now. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm like okay with it because it's very unique.
Yeah,
no one else did that. It's a great choice.
No one else can. And towards the end when he's just spreading his arms and running, that is such a cathartic moment even for the audience. I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful at the end. It's very pure and a wholesome moment.
It is. Like I said, it's one of the ridiculously good moments.
Easily the most wholesome character in one of these superhero films, fan companies. Flash was just fucking.
So to say, he is
like
the comic relief, right? He is the comic relief in the movie, which actually is
but he's
not
making
going to
jokes about
deep end. No, he's not being sarcastic.
Not jokes about
he isn't the comic relief in this movie.
You can't call him a comic relief because
he wasn't Justice League. He felt like he's there for being the the comic relief, but over here, not really. He had his own purpose. He had his own thing going on.
Sure, I don't mean to relegate to a Johnny Lever type comic relief. What I meant was all the characters they have their own deep. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like the wise line, wise crack.
Yeah, it's good that you bring this up because let's speak about the humor of the film because I thought all of the jokes that were inserted, which I liked in the 2017 version, were by Joss Whedon. But turns out all of the funny stuff was by Zack Snyder. Did you guys
Yeah,
notice this as
that's
well?
the weirdest thing. And the worst jokes were by Joss Whedon of all people.
Yeah, I mean, like something is
Something is
bleeding, and then
bleeding.
fucking brunch, all of that shit. And I am rich. That line is by Zack
Zack
Snyder.
Snyder.
Yeah, it was very cool. And let's talk about the Snyderverse. Do you think it's gonna happen?
I definitely think so. It's going to happen. Like no way they are saying no to that much amount of money and pressure basically. Because there was no reason they could have easily avoided it. Maybe in 2 to 3 years it would go away and just be a stuffed legend. But then the pandemic happened. I'm guaranteed the pandemic is the reason why we have
There's no way that anybody who loved this movie, and I did love this movie, would say no to this Snyderverse. There's no way. I mean, yes, there's been a lot of fuck ups in the past, but there's no way that after watching this version that you would say that this is not a universe that deserves your love. When I say your love, I mean you, me, everybody who's watched this movie and understand how important it is in our times. So definitely from what I feel and what I've seen so far, I think that this guy can take Zack Snyder. I didn't believe in him to take DC onto such a platform, but at this point, I I, I am a Zack Snyder fan. I am, and that means that I really want the Snyderverse to happen.
I think if he makes these mega events, they will purely work because we did not know Cyborg before this movie. We did not know Flash, except for that, Lois is the key scene. So there's a plan in place. I think if they make these 3 4 hours events, I think that is more than enough time for these characters. And what's good about characters like Joker and even Deathstroke, etc., that if they have their own movie, there's a chance that it's overdone for movies like these, if they bring in, you dedicate 20 to 25 minutes focusing on that character, you'll get the best 20 to 25 minutes. It'll be jam packed, and I think they'll get down to the meat of it without wasting much
Correct.
time. I think this is a very good way.
I think the ultimate lesson from this experience is just to be more understanding of the creative process. I think all of us were young and we're still, but I think we should more respect people who have like a creative vision rather than just shoot our mouths off on the internet. I think that is the primary reason why this movie exists, just to teach us this important lesson. So, final thoughts before we head off onto the sunset. Anirban, final thoughts and your rating.
I think this is a brilliant movie. Not that it doesn't have its own flaws, at least for me personally. I mean, each of you will have a different opinion on that, and some of you will know it, and some of you might not. And then again, like Vishik always says, to each his own, and yeah, and you're entitled to your own opinion. At the same time, nobody can disagree that Zack Snyder is one of the foremost filmmakers of our time, and that is not to be taken lightly. And something that I personally am looking forward to is the Snyderverse, though it might not happen. Even then, I would like to believe that it would happen. Now, I think this is a very brilliant movie. Even like I said, it has its flaws, but I still rate it very highly. I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. That makes sense. Yeah, it's a thumbs up for me.
Arindam.
I think this is an accomplishment. There plot holes, yes. Are there things you can nitpick about? Yes, definitely. But I loved it through and through. I'll give this a 9 out of 10. This was just great, and I felt I was one of those people. Like I said, I was apprehensive about it. I thought this would be an excess in Zack Snyderisms, but this was measured. This is not, the pacing was so good for a 4 hour movie, even though I did it in 2 settings because that was part of my fault. Like, nobody should start the Snyder cut at 10 o'clock at night. That isn't something that you must do. So I watched it in 2 sessions, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it's 9 out of 10. I do not rewatch superhero movies often, and this is one movie in which I went back and I watched some of the scenes again and again, especially some of those CG battles. Those were really well done. I loved it.
For me, this is a work of an auteur. Like I said to you guys earlier as well, I hate using that word. But in a world where all the movies look the same, feel the same, play out the same, this movie is completely different. And that is something which I expect out of every movie. Every movie should have some version of the people who are making it, their fingerprints should be on it. And that is what is so refreshing about Zack Snyder's Justice League, because when the name says Zack Snyder, it is his vision. It is unadulterated Zack Snyder. And if you like his work, like at least the three of us do, you will definitely enjoy it. For me, it's one of the top 5 superhero movies of all time. For me personally, I mean, it's easily gonna be one of the most rewatched films of this year for me. I personally loved it, and it's an experience. It's a complete trip, and I highly recommend that you show your support with your wallet. Pay for the movie. It's not a lot of money. It's just $75. So use the codes, whatever are available. Pay for the product and enjoy it, so that we ring the bell, the proverbial bell, saying that there is a demand for this film, right? And there is a demand for the Snyderverse. And yeah, restore the Snyderverse. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for sticking in what was unintentionally a little bit longer than we had intended today. But yeah, thank you for sticking with us. Keep listening to our podcast. We will try to make them as often as we can, but with work, etc., it gets a little difficult. So yeah, thank you very much. Keep following us on our socials. You can follow Arindam on his Instagram, me, myself, and Anirban also on their Instagram. It's linked in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye. Restore the Snyderverse.